Okay, so back to this idea of grouping objects. If we bring a null object in, basically a null object is just going to be a place setter. So it's in the objects palette, but we don't see it as an object out in the viewport. But what you can do is you can take the cube and put it inside of here, and then take your text and put that inside of there. And then you can click on the null object and you'll be able to move them all together. Okay. So it's a way of grouping objects together that allows you to have more control about how you move things around. The other question that you had about copy and paste. So if we open a new file, for example, and let's just bring in another object, like this disk, for example. If you can work between the windows. If you're on this page, we can navigate back and forth between the windows just by simply going to Window and clicking back and forth. Mm-hmm. And you can copy and paste between them. So if I take this disk and just do Command C, and then I should be able to go back to the other one and then paste it in place, and there's the disk right there. It brought it from one plane to another. So if you have multiple text folders open, you can just kind of copy and paste between them by navigating between the windows.
So, could I do Command C?
So now that we've actually made something, we can apply materials to it. So down at the bottom you have this palette called the Materials Manager. So if you want to add a material, you can click on File and New Material, and then that's going to give you this blank object right down below.
Texture.
So now here what you can do is you have controls in the Attributes Manager that you can add. You can also, what I like to do is just double click on this and it opens up a new palette. Double click down in the palette in the manager down below.
Here?
No, down below.
Oh, here?
Yeah, double click there. Okay. So this gives you all the different elements that you can add to it. You see the ones that are checked are the ones that are applied right now. Mm-hmm. So the first one, color, there's many different ways to do this. You can use the sliders if you want to change the color like that. You can double click on this little box and it'll bring you up a palette that you can choose. So you can add color to it, in any sort of formation that you like, and just sort of choose a color, whatever one you like. Hit OK. The other one that's a good one to experiment with is reflection. Yeah. If you click on it, you have to check it to apply it, but then also when it's clicked here, you have controls, and you can control the brightness of it. You can control the color of it. You can do a lot of different techniques there. Specular has to do with how shiny it is, so it gives you a surface quality. And the other one that's kind of interesting to play around with is this one that's called Bump. Well, first of all, let's look at this. Now that I've added some color and reflection to it, if you close this out,
I can't get to Bump. Is yours highlighted when you go to Bump?
Yeah, I'll show you Bump in just a minute. Why don't we just close that out and you can drag it onto the form. But here's the important part. What you need to do with this material down here is apply it to your object. Mm-hmm. So you can literally take it and drag it across to your objects palette and then drop it on the object that you want to apply the texture. Mm-hmm. So if you drop it onto here, it's going to change the color. And then you can always preview it with the render it out. So now we have this orange color.
How do I go to...
So that's pretty much color and material. You can always go back to the attribute, the attributes down here in the Materials Manager. Mm-hmm. You can double click it again, and you'll notice that in the Objects Manager, you see the object next to whatever you've placed it on.
Yeah.
So that helps you to determine what it is. And you can always go back and change. Like if you didn't like the color, you can always go back and change the color a little bit. You can change the material without having to go back and paste it back onto it again.
Yeah.
As soon as you do any changes to it, it's going to apply it directly to that sort of material. So the way the Bump channel works, if you click on Bump, It's not really going to give you anything quite yet. The bump actually needs an image to work from. So if you click on texture, the easiest one to do is noise. If you click on noise, yeah, that's going to give you this pattern right here. So if you click on this image right here, you can get a lot of different variables within that pattern. So you can also change the noise to a different type of texture. If you go down to where it says noise in the manager, you can click on that and there's all kinds of different, there's all kinds of different values that you can apply to it. So, and then you'll also notice that underneath where it says noise, you have the global scale. So if you click on one of those, yeah, see where it says global scale. So if you made this smaller, like let's say 25%, it's going to be a much finer texture on the surface. Or if you made it bigger, you could make it like 300%. It's going to be a much bigger texture on the surface. So you can control how it affects, the image. And then if you go back,
how would we be able to see the color here? I don't like the black and white. Would it be here?
Well, you can you can change those colors. It's not gonna change the color. When it says color 1 and 2 right here, that's just the contrast between them, right? So like if you were to make this gray instead, then it would have a much different surface effect. But essentially the bump channel is going to read the difference between the light and the dark, and that's what's going to create the texture on the surface. And then if you click back on the bump over here, you can go back to the original palette if you click it here, and you can control the strength. So you can make it really strong, really apparent, or you can make it very subtle, get that in between. So then if we preview this, if we zoom in and preview it, you should be able to see that it's given it a little bit of subtle texture on the surface. It's kind of hard to see here, but there's no light quite yet.
So we'll have to drag it down.
Okay, so we've applied some texture. We noticed that the texture is not very apparent on the faces. A few things that you can do. One is you can, when you click on the material out here, you have the material is projected onto the surface, and there's different variables that you can choose. So if you click on it here, it gives you a palette below as the different types of mapping that you can do. So projection, if you change it from, let's say, UVW mapping, which kind of wraps it around like shrink wraps it essentially, you can change that to frontal, which is going to give you a different type of mapping. So if we view that, then we can start to see some of the texture on the surface becoming more apparent, just the way that it's read. So you may have to just play with the different types of projections that are listed. The other thing is that right now, when it's in the extrude NURBS format, we don't really have control over individual parts of the object. We can't change any of the points or the polygons or anything like that yet. If you want, you can make the object editable. So if you go to Structure and Functions. Oh boy, where did I find? Oh yeah, Functions make editable. What that does is it makes it so the object can be manipulated with more than just the basic forms. So it breaks apart the caps, and then the extrude is the pieces in between it. So you could essentially put a color on the front and on the sides as two different images.
Again, I don't have that. Would I have to go to Tools?
So now that we have some textures on here, the next thing that we can do is add some light. So it looks like you have a light bulb. I have this little form right here.
Oh,
So if you click on that, you should have different types of light that come through. In this case, I'm just going to choose an omnipresent light, which is this sort of omnidirectional, which means it just radiates out in different directions. And as soon as you put a light in, the object is going to change and be responsive not to just the the light that's in the editor, but it's going to actually get lit from the light that you add to it. So I'm just going to put a floor in, and then raise my object up a little bit. I've already got a light in the scene, and then if you render this out, you can see that the shadows are interacting with the floor and the objects themselves. Looks like I got to move my word up a little bit higher there. There we go. The other thing is that you can add, if you click on the light in the objects palette, and then down below you have all kinds of different settings. You can change the color of the light. If I wanted to make it like more of a yellow light, I could do that here by just selecting the actual color of the light itself. You can also add a shadow. So if you click on shadow, it'll give you a few options. Soft shadow or hard shadow or area shadow. I like the soft shadow is a good one to just start with. And if you render that out, now you're going to see how it's affected by the overall shadow. Now that we have a light situation that that's working fairly well, we're going to render this out as a JPEG so we can use it in other areas. Hopefully you have the same things that I do, but we go to render, click on render, and then we're going to go to render settings, and this is going to give us different options to render the object out. So general, we're just going to not worry about that. Output, this allows you to choose the different output. So I'm just going to pick a like 2400 by, I don't know, let's say 3200, or no, that's not right. Let's say 1800. And then so that's going to give you the screen size that you're going to render it out to. Then you can choose, if you go to save, you can choose a path, which is going to be, if you click on the little dots to the side, you can choose a folder. So let's see, I probably have a folder here, Cinema 4D, and then I can name it. I'm just going to call it Name 1. And then you can choose the format. So right now it's at a TIFF. You could choose a TIFF, a JPEG, there's all kinds of different formats you can choose. I'm just going to grab a JPEG. And then once this is set, you can close this window. And then what we can do is click on the middle button, which is a render to the picture viewer. And it's going to render it out. We're going to see it happen before our eyes. Render it out fully. And then you should be able to go close that out once it finishes rendering. You should be able to go to your folder, wherever that may be, buried here somewhere, and find the file, which is right here, Name 1. And of course this you could open with Photoshop or whatever imaging software you want to use and alter it further from there.